right, cool. The tweet just went out.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's up, Jason?
How's it going?
It's going good. We got a hell of a crew.
Good.
Dude, is that your man cave?
This is my man cave. Yes, I'm working out of my home office, so I don't have a green screen behind me. I probably should. They do that on Zoom, don't they?
I think you can still do it. Just might look a little whack.
I should have dug out my green screen. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. Next time.
Cool. Well, Jason, the only rules is that you can't say COVID-19 or coronavirus. Otherwise, you have to drink.
Whoa, that's very medical specific. I feel like you guys are attacking me personally, but okay, I'll avoid that.
If we say China virus, we're good, right?
Oh yeah.
Or Rona, whatever.
The Chinese virus.
Well, I guess maybe I'll start. My best friend from forever tested positive, but he is already on the upswing, it seems. He had a fever for a few days. Yesterday, he was already better. Today, he's better than he was yesterday. But yeah, so I've been checking in on him, but he seems to be improving. Unfortunately, his kids are with his parents in another state because he's in the middle of flight training because he's a pilot, and long story. But anyway, that's my story about not the thing that I can't say without having to drink, but I want to drink anyway.
I heard that like this is not going to be real to people until you actually know someone who is affected. Do anyone else like know someone who's personally contracted it?
Yeah, so my buddy down the street is one of the Biogen executives. So I don't know if you guys read about that in Boston. It was like 100 people at this meeting for Biogen contracted coronavirus. So a bunch of them returned. Strong. Yeah, wild, whatever they were doing there. But it was crazy. So he was diagnosed by labs, positive labs, high fever, really, really sick, quarantined his whole family for 2 weeks. 3 of the 5 of them were tested negative. I don't know why the CDC didn't test the whole family, but he's really been struggling from a recovery standpoint. So no treatment. They didn't put him on the azithromycin and the hydrochloroquine. They just gave him supportive care. And he spiked a fever 2 weeks after his symptoms went away. Again, high fever, some chest pain, so back in quarantine again. So really very, very peculiar symptoms. That's kind of my experience so far with the Chinese virus.
Yikes.
My son and his girlfriend moved back home. He got laid off. So he and his girlfriend moved back into an apartment that's in our house. And 5 minutes after he unloaded all his stuff, he got a call saying that his supervisor that he did his exit interview with on Tuesday is sick. So our whole house is now quarantined.
Oh, wow.
We've got him sealed off on one side of the house to make sure he's not sick. But we're 1 week in, and hopefully he'll be fine, and his girlfriend's fine, and we're all fine, and we can not be quarantined anymore.
You know what's really peculiar about this is like the techniques they used in China. I keep hearing these undertones of like people floating the idea of forcibly extracting the person who could potentially be quarantined and moving them away from like the house. Which,
yeah, they've got centers.
Right?
Yeah,
like turning hotels into like sick wards.
Yeah.
For quarantine.
But at the same time, there's some great supports out there that, like, if you show up in, I think was it Singapore I was reading about? There was one country, might have even been in China as well, where if you get off a plane, they like put you on a bus and take you to a place, or they take you home.
Australia
And then
is doing that, I think.
yeah, and they like give you a basket of groceries, and then they put like tape across your door, and they're like, okay, we're here, we will deliver food, but you are, you know, you're not allowed out of you're basically under house arrest until that's done.
Australia, I've read, is doing that. Australian citizens, you know, returning home still, I guess people are still in other places or coming back, and they're doing exactly that. The government's, you know, renting you a hotel room, I guess, I don't know where, and that's where you go for 2 weeks.
That's where you go. But at least they're supporting you and saying, you know, look, we're going to give you food, we're going to give you whatever you need. We're going to keep an eye on you, we're going to test you, we're going to take your temperature and all those things, instead of just being like, okay, off you go, we're going to trust you, and don't stop for groceries, not that we're going to help you get any. You know, it's an interesting approach. It's a little more heavy-handed, but at the same time it kind of makes sense.
Would you guys tolerate like people being removed? Like if you were exposed to someone, or like 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon, and you know, voluntarily or forcibly being put into like a quarantine situation where you weren't allowed to like quarantine at your own house with your family, but actually go someplace? I mean, I just don't know how that would go over.
Yeah,
that's one reason I told my son to come home. I said, if something were to happen where we're all stuck, sheltered in place, I want my kids with me. Like, come and stay.
That coronavirus is nasty.
Maybe it's the 6 transactions, you know, fungibility rule. If you know, if you go back 6 transactions, like with payments, then it's fair game. It doesn't matter if it was a terrorist or a drug dealer.
Changing the subject from the Rona, since all this happened, all these exchanges are reporting massive volumes, and everyone is buying. Like, what's there to be thought from this?
All right, I'll go first.
Oh yeah,
I'll be quick. So I just signed up for Swan Bitcoin to stack Sats. Disclosure: I'm an investor. It took second disclosure, it took less than 5 minutes to sign up. So I finally took the plunge to the auto DCA. But with the buying of Bitcoin, you know, everybody got liquidated in the recent downturn. But I don't know. I tweeted out half an hour ago that hard money will be the asset to own in the 2020s. So Bitcoin and sorry, hardcore guys, also gold, but that's my 2 cents.
Well, if we're gonna do that, you guys should check out Fold and stack some Sats. Obviously, you don't even need to sign up. There's no KYC. You just get free Sats whenever you buy stuff. That's
everyone chilling.
Let's get all this chilling out right now. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're having a moment right now, and it's just gonna take. It might take a year or two for people to figure it out. 2008 spawned Bitcoin, and I think this is going to be our 2008. So I'm not saying I know what's going to happen, but I do expect it's going to be big.
I've seen recently a pickup in interest from people looking to buy like a new no pre-corners that are saying, okay, well, maybe it's the time to buy some Bitcoin. What do I do? Where do I go? So I've seen a pickup in that demand, and from the Bitcoiners, I don't think anybody is selling at this point. If anything, people are buying at this level. So I'm wondering who is the natural seller, right?
I think it's minor capitulation right now.
We've seen that in the hash rate, but now that they've unplugged the machines, they are not selling anymore to offset their fee. So who has infinite fiat to short, right?
That's the thing. There's people who need fiat in whatever. I mean, especially people who have lost paychecks over, you know, with companies going under or furloughs or whatever, people are dipping into their reserves in whatever capacity they've got. So even if they're having to sell, hopefully, you know, if it were me, I'd be aiming to buy back as soon as possible, but rent is due, mortgages are due, groceries have to be purchased. And if you're not getting a paycheck in fiat, you're probably having to liquidate other things.
Yeah, my 2 cents, which I tell my clients and friends, is if you have access to credit, okay, and it's credit that you can access, that you can borrow, which can't get liquidated, right? I'm talking about, you got a HELOC, an equity line on your house. You have an unsecured credit line that you set up with a bank recently. If you haven't already, man, draw that line. If you have to have that credit outstanding for a year or two, it's worth paying, 5% interest, right? It's worth swallowing that loss just to have actual cash dollars in your bank account, because we don't know how long this downturn is going to last. So not financial advice, but I will just observe what I have done myself. By the way, I'm not borrowing to buy more Bitcoin. I'm just saying
I thought that's what you're going to say.
Nope. I'm securing as much cash. I'm securing as much cash as I need to, continue to slowly auto DCA. Is there some price at which I'll risk the farm? I don't know, maybe, but I'm not going to advise anyone to do that. Hoard as much cash as you can to, basically to live out the next period of time, and we don't know how long it's going to be.
So what you're saying essentially is, if you have access to cheap credit, take it out now. Exactly. While the banks are still lending.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Well put, Elizabeth.
Zach, you've been quiet. Any thoughts here?
Yeah,
what's Blockstream seeing? Emperors of Bitcoin.
No, once I start drinking, I don't speak for Blockstream anymore. I think this probably isn't a very popular opinion, but they're definitely Kraken and Coinbase specifically have put out a lot of content recently that they've seen massive numbers in new user onboarding and spot buy volume and whatnot. So there's obviously a relatively increased interest in buying, but like Bitcoin still isn't out competing cash. Everyone wants cash right now. So I imagine like sell pressure for Bitcoin has not started to evaporate yet. I definitely don't think the bottom is in. I'm friends with a lot of traders who ridicule me for that. Just my opinion. That's how I'm planning my trades and finances and whatnot. But yeah, cash is still king, and obviously Bitcoin has a lot of inherent properties that give it the potential to outcompete cash. But right now, it's not quite at that stage, and I'm just sort of have some cash on the sidelines waiting to buy a bit lower. That's pretty much my take. Everyone wants cash. Equity investors, Bitcoin miners, and I don't think we've reached peak crisis yet. So I don't think we've reached peak selling yet. And I expect the tight correlation we've seen in this coronavirus era between traditional markets and crypto markets to continue. And I don't think the legacy market bottom is in. I don't think crypto market bottom is in. So I'm just sort of waiting to buy lower. And like maybe that bottom won't come. Maybe bottom is in. I could be completely wrong, but that's just sort of my opinion in all this.
I think that's a fake correlation. I think that's a post-fact narrative we came up with, where there was a BitMEX deleveraging, and then we're like, oh, they're correlated now, and started talking about risk on versus risk off. But I mean, you know how thin the market is. I don't think that was real correlation. Just throwing that out.
I don't think the BitMEX event was like, obviously that was completely orthogonal to like legacy markets behavior, but I think I personally am not ignoring the fact that everyone wants cash right now, and crypto is still a very risk-on asset, and people are trying to deleverage, have a much heightened, much lower risk appetite right now, significantly so. So I'm not pretending that there's like a causality for that correlation, but in my opinion, the correlation is still there after COVID started like wrecking financial markets and creating severe global uncertainties. And I don't expect that to like go away over the next week or 2 months or anything like that. So but just my opinion.
Elizabeth, Jason, anyone has opinion?
Yeah, I wanted to I agree with what Elizabeth's saying, but I think that two things happened. We had this Chinese virus the global economic slowdown and shuttering of things, you know, and then we have this halving event. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, just no COVID, no
Right,
Corona.
right. So Chinese virus.
No, I think we got to stop the Chinese.
Yeah, you should drink. When
That one
you
is
say
that
China
one's
virus.
grating
No
on
more
me
Chinese
every time I
virus.
hear it, man.
Yeah.
That makes me want to.
All right. I absolutely don't believe that we have gone through the full mining capitulation. I think that's going to happen probably months after the halving. So you're going to have
I
people
agree.
who go through the next, to May. They're going to hang on, liquidate their whole cash position that they can tolerate, all of their Bitcoin stores, then default. You know, they have contracts, purchase power agreements they're going to have to default on or clear up. They're going to try to liquidate old, you know, let's call it Gen 1 technology. So S9s or 14 terahash units, they'll be dead. They'll hit the wall. Those that are mining with advanced gear now, S17s, but high power costs, so 6-7 cents a kilowatt hour, they're going to struggle at prices that we're at now, but we'll be able to persevere. The weak hands will get flushed out. I'm saying 90 days after the halving, you're going to have hodlers, strong hands, total mining capitulation, and hopefully we come out of the coronavirus era and we see, you know, a nice move up because of, you know, supply demand economics kicking in.
Yeah, I agree. Just to like maybe clarify or add an addendum to what I said, I fully expect this like crisis correlation that I'm seeing. I don't want to extend it to anyone else necessarily, but that I still think is there to break and to break like very acutely at some point in the near term future after the halving, I guess. But I think like everything will stay pretty tightly correlated. Everyone wants cash, and the markets will continue to trend downward for the next like couple months, several months. But, yeah.
Do you think that there are still a lot of those low efficiency miners online?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so, because the block reward hasn't changed yet. So like, I mean, they're still profitable, but that's going to change. And then after the halving, obviously they're going to run into some problems.
Yeah, Christy, we had a pretty significant decrease in difficulty recently. I think it was like 16% decrease in difficulty. There was some capitulation, but if you're mining right now with S9s and your power cost is 2 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour, you're still in money. You're maybe selling 80% of your Bitcoin, but you're still making money right now. It's
I wasn't sure where the energy prices were for
Yeah.
a lot of those. I know that the low efficiency miners, some of them have gone off, but I guess that's in the more expensive energy areas.
Yeah, you've got some people mining in North America between 2 and 4 cents a kilowatt hour, and they're good. But it's those with kind of slow computers or slow ASICs, and 6-7 cents or higher kilowatt hour pricing. They're not going to make it. I
think we're on track for another double-digit percentage difficulty reduction too in the next week. It'll change obviously as days go by, but another negative difficulty adjustment. So yeah, plenty of low efficiency miners still online.
And this is, we had a debate about this, and I felt like this was all priced in because it's just, if I can figure this out, anybody can figure this out. I mean, it's literally algorithmic. I was saying 2 months ago, the price could be 6,800 Bitcoin going into the halving. I mean, where's the price right now?
Well, now that you said that, it's going to moon, obviously.
It's been mooning all day.
Yeah.
Has it?
Great April Fools.
Yeah, right.
So wait, Jason, we did have a debate about is the halving priced in? It was like almost 11,000 back then. Was it now? It's like 6,000 now. So like, was the halving priced in a month and a half ago? Like, how's that work?
It was like the dumbest debate ever, and I took the position that was ridiculous. So my position was this halving was priced in, and the fact that I was sitting there at 11,000 saying we'd be at 6,800 was because that was being priced in. That was just my position. All future halvings are not priced in.
Right.
Do we agree on that?
That's
Halving is
pretty-
not priced
yeah.
in.
Well, from my point of view, it's my first halving, so I will limit my comments as I don't have the previous two experience. So I'll see how things unfold. I think cost of energy is very low. Some machines out there are very the newer generation are highly efficient, and I also think versus the other having that there's a bigger user base. So more people hoping to have a lower price. So I don't think the opportunity will last long if there's a blip down. So I think we have more potential buyers to offset if there's a price reduction, which rejigs the mining cycle. But we'll see. I don't know. As I said, it's my first halving. So.
Anyone have opinions about the recent stablecoin pump and what that means for Bitcoin?
I think it's incredibly bullish. I think it's incredibly bullish in the sense that we've seen insane selling pressure over the last several weeks, and I think we'll continue to, but that money isn't leaving the ecosystem, it's staying here, and obviously trust is not being lost in these sort of crypto native fiat coins that we've created, and that's just incredibly bullish. So selling pressure may continue. Maybe everyone's going to buy and the bottom's in, but regardless, there is like a very high level of trust in the sort of market infrastructure that we've created, and that's great.
Bullish. Anyone have a bearish take?
Hey, Ellie.
Hey, nice
What
to
up,
see
Ellie?
you.
Yeah, I think the stablecoin, the vast increase in, just volume or amount outstanding says more about the desire for dollars right now in a general market panic. But I totally agree with Zach that the more, volume and the more value we have in, blockchain based tokens, God help me for saying that, is good for Bitcoin.
Is there anything that's not good for Bitcoin?
Central banks having infinite fiat can extend short positions. That's not good.
Long term?
Yeah, I mean, I love that they have infinite fiat as long as I have a long enough time horizon. That's just sort of
that's what I've
underscoring the
been
value
saying.
prop. But in the short term, yeah.
I guess it's a matter of surviving the short term.
True.
One of the people that I spoke to for a good chunk of time this week, and anybody who's had a conversation with Francis Pouliot knows you can cram a lot into a short period of time of a conversation with Francis. It was awesome. But he was saying, as somebody mentioned earlier, I think Zach, you mentioned earlier that the exchanges are seeing booming business right now. He said it's just been hand over fist, just trying to onboard people. A lot of traffic, a lot of volume going on Bull Bitcoin in Canada, and there's been a lot of interest. I think that is a good thing. I think that it may scare off people who only got in recently, but people who are kind of finally twigging onto it, it's a really interesting time to get started. I know with my other son who's been saving Bitcoin for a while now, he's stoked. Like, he watched his Bitcoin savings cut in half and he doesn't care. He's like, I'm buying more. So it's a lot of fun to see sort of where people's attitudes go and what their time frame is.
I think I actually
Strong hand.
heard from Coin Metrics that most of the people who did the sell-off were institutional holders, which makes sense because if you're a large financial institution, everyone knows where your positions are if you need the liquidity to sell off Bitcoin, which you're less open about how much you probably own. So they had to move out. And I also view that as a positive because it's, again, going back to the people, and you want hodlers who actually believe in it. You don't want these huge institutions owning large swaths of Bitcoin.
I agree, but the flip side of that is that a lot of market makers and sort of like liquidity providers got wrecked, right? And so that also means the increased volatility in the short term, which I mean, I'm fine with, but not everyone is.
Yeah.
I think I saw CME data recently that said most like net institutional positions on the CME were all for Bitcoin were also short. But like a lot of people just got eliminated from the BitMEX price action a couple of weeks ago. And I'm not going to speculate on like the event itself, but just like their net flows and open interest and all of that sort of speak for itself, that a lot of people are hurt, and it's not going to fix itself in a couple of weeks or something. So it's encouraging to see all the spot buy volume, but like margin and institutional attitude is definitely significantly bearish, or just like out of the game short term.
I mean, do you guys think that the leverage that's being used right now to trade Bitcoin's a good thing for the market?
How could it possibly be a good thing?
Well, that's my question. I mean, does anyone feel like that's a good thing where you're seeing like, you know, the amount of leverage that's being used? Because that's really what's these guys got wrecked. They just got caught.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just say that one of my big bugbears about the Bitcoin market in general is the leverage, because I just think that it entices those who haven't learned enough about it to gamble, and then they get wrecked in situations like the recent BitMEX liquidation, and it, if anything, probably raises the volatility of the asset, which doesn't really help adoption for anyone. So
whoa, I disagree with that.
Yeah.
When has volatility been something that's prevented adoption? Volatility creates adoption, creates fees. Volatility, I think, is overall good.
Okay.
Volatility is the icebreaker that gets people in the game, and then they.
I think most Bitcoin maximalists get what is good for Bitcoin really wrong. That's my personal take, but
I think it depends on the time frame you're looking at. I mean, I'm talking about short-term vol basically. I'm a big fan of number go up, and it's very hard to lose money on a 4-year cycle. But yeah, I don't think that the short-term vol helps the case in terms of developing into money. But I get your perspective.
I think the leverage that a lot of these exchanges, the fact that like basically every exchange has 50, 100x leverage as sort of like a default feature isn't great, but also at the same time, people who actually open trades 50x levered, I mean, they're not trading with size, like at least like most of the time. But like, and as a corollary to that, the insane thing is on that like Black Thursday on BitMEX, if you only 2x longed the daily open, you would have been liquidated. Like, and 2x is not by no means is insane leverage. Like if you're getting over like 3-4x, like okay, maybe cooled a little bit, but and that just like goes to how insane that day's price action was. And we saw like volatility spike to the highest, 30-day volatility spike to the highest levels since like 2004 or 14. Like it's insane. So I don't know if like the leverage itself played a part in all of that, but like as a topic unto itself, I mean, crypto is like, Bitcoin is simultaneously a revolutionary savings technology and also just like a circus for degenerate gamblers. And it like works well inviting in both of those audiences. And I don't think we're ever going to get rid of one or the other, just sort of how it is. But if I had like my ideal market set up, no, we wouldn't be offering 50, 100x leverage left and right. But I don't necessarily think it's bad for the space as a whole. It's just like how it is. I don't know. Easy money for exchanges.
So going back to your question about stable coins, like I've been pretty open about a strategy that I deployed. I came out of the stock market 7 months ago, probably left a little bit on the table doing that. But I really started to explore what a kind of digital bank would look like. And I'm an investor in BlockFi. So I went there and I said, let's play a game. Let's take a bunch of cash and put it in GUSD. And in full disclosure, at one point, I think I owned 40% of all the GUSD that was actually minted. So that's how light the volume is there. Wow. But I personally owned 40 or 50% of all the GUSD. And I just parked it in 8.6% APY. It allows for me to go into Bitcoin almost seamlessly because they have a trading function inside BlockFi. I just think it's pretty cool to be able to not have to deal with wiring funds, and you're collecting interest on your cash. I'm outperforming the stock market. I want nothing to do with that. And I can buy Bitcoin and earn interest there as well. What do you guys think about these kind of, are you just like, not your keys, not your Bitcoin? I mean,
the prices on Gox were great. I don't know if you guys remember, it was really that ARB opportunity. It's great until it's not.
Can you explain to me
I think BlockFi I like BlockFi, but
BlockFi shilling is always allowed. I love BlockFi. It's like the greatest team. So.
Okay, cool. Zach is good.
Can you walk me through the interest generation mechanism? You land on the other side and you clock a spread. Is that it?
Yeah, they're rehypothecating your Bitcoin and GUSD, and there's ARB there. So they're able to kick off, 8.6%. That's a guaranteed 12 month guarantee on that.
No credit risk.
Well,
did you use the word guarantee?
Yeah, they're
Did I hear that right?
Of course.
Excuse me. They're locking that in for me. So yeah, they locked in 8.6. As long as they're viable, they're locking it in because you know that rate changes. You've seen it change all over the place. But the GUSD, from my approach, has been a 12-month lock for me as long as they're viable. They raised $18 million August 2019, another 30 million in February this year. They got cash.
They're killing it.
They're I think,
So okay, I'm gonna cut this off.
Yeah, sorry.
Would you recommend stablecoin interest account to someone who's just looking for a high yield savings account? Like I have a cousin, he's getting 2% right now. Should I say, yo, you can get 8% if you go GUSD in BlockFi?
Yes.
Raise your hand if you would recommend that to a relative that wants to get high yield savings. Just curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
regardless, they're not holding their own keys ever. Like they're either fiat or something else. Like it's USD.
Yeah, but you're telling them to take some very serious insurance away. I'm pretty sure that most of our relatives that haven't heard us talking for the last 10 Thanksgivings don't understand that they now have one counterparty that they're risking.
Sure, I guess it would depend on the age of the relative. I was recommending this idea too. If they're younger, then definitely, but I wouldn't want to take the trouble to explain it to my parents or grandparents or something. But I on the topic of stable coins, I'm for Jason, but also for anyone else, since you mentioned GUSD, Tether just passed 6 billion and no stable coin has even come close to touching their market cap, market share. I'm just curious if anyone is long-term bullish on any other stable coin besides Tether. Granted, some of them are relatively new, within the past year, 2-3 years. For others, Tether's just untouchable as it seems to date.
I'll throw myself to the wolves. I'm bullish die.
Okay.
I might be in a very different category as a lot of folks here. I really want to see something that's not just fiat backed. I do think that that's always going to be a larger market. Over collateralization as a way to hold a peg is a bitch. But I want something that I can get in and out of without weird wires. And I don't know. I want to be able to do it on my terms.
I'll speak up. I just joined. I'm Haley.
Haley.
Hi, how's it going? I was like, how do I get into this conversation? Yeah, so I work for Coinbase. I'm regulatory counsel there. So obviously I can plug USDC, but I'm not sure if you all talked about it before I joined, but like joined the call. But with the market volatility that we saw with COVID-19, the interest in stable coins just like skyrocketed. And so I'm definitely like bullish on stable coins in general. I obviously think USDC is the best, and we're having some pretty cool conversations with big name players in the space about like possibly being part of it. But so
Haley, COVID-19 is a drink word. So that or coronavirus, you have to come up with alternatives. Also, no Chinese virus too. We're adding that to the list.
I agree with that. All right, everyone drink up then. What's everyone drinking?
Sure. What is everyone drinking?
Yeah, we have not done that yet, and I keep wanting to know.
I'll go. Go ahead.
Look at that.
We got some nice whiskey here.
Yeah,
Coin
White Claw.
cart guys back
White
in.
Claw.
A piece of
back in
trash.
DC.
Is that White Claw?
White Claw.
With Bitcoin shirt?
I've got a White Claw and a really nice gin that I'm trading.
Nice.
Yeah, Claw's a good
I'm very,
mixer.
like British. Is this British to have tea and rosé? I don't know.
Oh,
But
that's nice. I approve.
Straight
Ooh,
back
Cuddle
home.
One. There we go.
I
Vodka.
mixed it with coffee. It tastes awful.
yeah, that's not good.
I'm having a Negroni in a Depression era glass.
There you go.
From the 1930s.
Very appropriate.
That's awesome.
Which is
I made a-
earlier dated? Has the Negroni been around as a drink that long?
I don't know if I have an anachronism, but I will check.
My wife loves them, so she'll be interested to know. I'll look it up too.
Is anyone following the next saga in the Gox era? Like, are people actually going to get their money back at some point?
I'm trying to find out. There was an email sent out last week, apparently, and my son actually it got goxed. He used it once, and lost his coins. So he gets the emails, and I keep telling him, what, you got to open the email, find out what it says. I still don't know what it is, but there was some sort of notification that came out last week. I just don't know if anyone else has had access to hearing about it, but he had his 2FA on a phone he loaned his brother, and I'm like, dude, you cannot lose that phone.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way to get into your coin. Like, you got to put that thing in a vault somewhere. So yeah, I just don't know. I don't know what that letter was, but something has happened apparently. From what I understand, they are giving back Bitcoins. If you had Bitcoin, if you lost Bitcoin, you get Bitcoin. If you lost fiat, you get fiat. How they expect to give people back all the Bitcoins that were lost, I don't know, because they kept selling them off in spite of all the best advice coming to them from like Jesse Powell and everybody else saying, don't sell the Bitcoins, hang on to the Bitcoins, just give people back what they lost. So yeah, I don't know how they're going to give it back, but they say they're going to. There's 2 lawsuits that are holding up the works. And those lawsuits are, one of them, at least from what I understand, is claiming that all the money is theirs, or 90% or 80% of the coins belong to them, regardless of who put in a claim. So it's kind of messed
Peter
up.
Vestness.
I don't know. I can't remember who it is.
It's in the Japanese court, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well,
So they need to pull a Carlos Ghosn. They need to jailbreak that. Just get the assets out the country and distribute them.
Well, the problem is that the Japanese court said, yes, we're going to give all the creditors their coins and their money and everything, but then there was a lawsuit launched that is now under review to see if it has merit, and until that gets through the courts, they're not distributing anything.
Yeah.
And I know there's an excellent write-up by, the name escapes me, the lawyer who's been involved in this. darn it, his it's on the tip of my tongue.
Peter McCormick interviewed.
I was going to say Peter McCormick has the guy as a sponsor.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, but he's the fellow, he's written it up. Like if you follow his Medium posts, he's been really good about keeping people up to date on it. So yeah.
The only news I've heard, because I'm a evil legacy finance guy, is that Fortress Investment Group has continued to, buy up people's claims, because people who've been, waiting for years and years are like, sure, pay me. I don't know what the going rate is. It's pretty,
not much. It's like
pretty
10%.
deep discount. Yeah. 10 cents on the dollar or something, 10, 20 cents.
Yeah. They figure out.
Would you take, would you take the money and just buy Bitcoin with it, or what, taking a chance and just waiting?
Yeah. I mean, at an 80 to 90% discount, to face value, I would probably wait it out, but I'm not everyone.
Yeah.
But versus Bitcoin in your custody, like you could just buy it and at least, you have it.
I know that in our case, what my son has said is he thought it was gone anyway. So he's already written it off in his head. So anything that comes at the end of the day for him is like just bonus.
It's in the Mark Karpellis brain wallet.
Yeah.
I feel like that's how we all act a little bit in this space. Everything is funny money. Yeah. And every gain we get is like, that's cool. And so if it's gone, okay.
I don't feel that way.
Good. That's good. I feel like I'm a lucky guy, and anything bad that happens after that, I'm like, I got lucky the first time.
Yeah, I don't know. I had to be young, I guess. Maybe you're my age.
I have 2 kids. I have 2 kids now, so I'm starting to get a little more.
I do too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've gone from 100% BTC to like 95% diversified. Yeah.
Diversification.
I'm glad it's 95% still though. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Pretty good for an ETH head.
No, I had to get some Tron. Had to get a little XRP, USDC.
What else are people paying attention to? Anything other trends that we're not talking about that we should be?
Okay, I'll say it. Things ain't the same no more. The deleveraging is upon us. And like I said before, don't sell anything, don't sell your Bitcoins, but hoard your cash, pick your places in terms of taking risk. But we're approaching the end game, I think, with respect to the very long-term debt cycle.
I think that we need to keep an eye on both the inflation and deflation theme, where I think we may be experiencing deflation in what we're long and inflation in what we need. So I need to keep an eye on that. And I think that the legacy financial system will be pumped. Like they're going to try to maintain it. Like when you look at the stock market right now, like the traditional market, I find it hard to believe that we are still at only 30-35% drop when nobody's shopping and nobody's, like, the stores are closed, nobody's working, everybody's at home, like the people are not spending. So I've puzzled by the amount of money pumped into the system. So I don't think that the full correction is still in, and that so the other trends I'm following is what will people need, because there will have to be a rationality come back into the valuations of the market, and we're going to see repricing in the real estate, the Airbnb market, into the consumer loan, all the collateralized debt. Like that's just not there yet. So we're more swings to go, and the distressed credit people will, if they still have liquidity, will find opportunities. And there's always what we fundamentally need but I think that the whole the way the economy was structured and the way we're spending has fundamentally changed, and that's what we need to reassess what's truly an essential.
I'm really interested in kind of a evolving real estate bubble. specifically like in the REIT space. I mean, I think there's going to be some real opportunities if you have capacity to do some interesting things in the real estate space, and maybe even see, some digitized products come along, I mean, as these things blow up. Anybody else interested in that space?
Definitely.
Mhm.
Definitely. I've got kids who've been eyeing the real estate market for a couple of years now and waiting, and now they're like, this could be good. Apparently, one of the pressures on the real estate market that they foresee coming from the Airbnb market, where all of these, super hosts have 6, 7, 8 properties that they've got mortgaged, that none of them are being filled. And Airbnb is offering some sort of relief, but not nearly enough to keep these properties afloat. So I think we're going to see a lot of condos coming up, multi-unit homes coming up. I think that'll be really interesting. But at the same time, I think from what I've been reading, there's a freeze on the market right now where people just aren't buying or selling. They're just putting everything on pause. And I think that real estate agents are going to find themselves extremely busy come whenever the fall or whenever this blows over.
I'm in the market to buy a house because we've been waiting for something like this.
Yeah.
But on the professional side, I'm trying to sell a building, and we listed it and had our first few people go in right before all this hit. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter if we discount it. Unless someone wants to buy sight unseen, we have to wait.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah.
And it has to be nearly impossible to get a mortgage right now. I couldn't imagine a bank being able or have the bandwidth or capacity to do that with SBA and everything that's happening. I just can't.
Yeah.
Like even a refi, I heard or I've seen, you would think that the price of a refi would be good right now, but the rates are actually going up, which is counterintuitive. But it's
just the
very
flood
competitive.
Of people refinancing. Yeah,
that's very competitive.
From a lender perspective, they don't know which business will be folding. They don't know who will have a job. They don't know who's going to survive this. So they firstly need the purge to go on, and then to reassess the credit. Otherwise, we're back into the ninja loans back of 2008. No income, no job, and here's your mortgage. We're just back into that. So right now, credit lenders that are doing the assessment are working with nothing other than the collateral, which is the house that they're not able to price because it was deflated from previous values. So they must have a very, very complex scenario, and they're dealing with all at the same time they're dealing with the default. So they are way more exposed themselves with their current loan, and extending new loans and the complete uncertainty must not be a comfortable position.
Yeah, my two sats for Matt. Matt, you'll get a good buying opportunity. It may take a year because homeowners, if you're buying like a single family home, they don't capitulate immediately. It takes a while. They think they're going to get their price. They bide their time. They sell down their other liquid assets before they do what they have to do with the house. So
makes sense. I'm just glad my wife's roughly agrees with you, because before she was like this summer, and now she's like, let's see what happens. So it's been
my girlfriend's mom is an appraiser, and she's never been more busy.
Wow.
Yeah, the refi market is extremely hot. I am refinancing my house. I got one appraisal, which was absurd because it happened like a month ago. So that was probably the peak market price that I'll ever see for the house that I live in. And I'm waiting and hoping that the deal closes, that the refi deal closes. It should, we should be done in 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, I hope that we get this over the finish line. But the banker is like, yeah, I've been working 7 days a week, 16-hour days. They've got more than they can deal with. So they're doing refi business now in high volume.
As a banker, I can attest to that. It has not been fucking fun.
You're in this market?
I'm an investment banker. And for all the deals we're looking at right now, the credit's really fucking tight. So I'm not sure at least for doing, VC investing, it's pretty tough right now.
I can make the case that the Federal Reserve, which is now controlled by the Treasury, which is controlled by our president, can buy interest rates in the mortgage market down to any level they want. They can pin the 30-year mortgage rate at 0 if they want to. I mean, in the short term. I'm not saying they will. So, it was already the real estate market was already one of the most manipulated with respect to monetary policy. So why would that change now?
Yeah, I think what gets scary is we've kept interest rates near 0. So what happens now that that's not working anymore? And we're like, okay, what other levers can we fucking do? Well, we'll just keep printing and printing. And
yeah,
partly why the credit markets are freezing up, at least on some levels.
Frost, can you comment on I've read an article today that because the Fed took the rates to 0, it's really making a problem with the banks with their hedge, how they're edging their bank book. So lots of banks are in trouble because with the rate cuts, essentially it's screwed their edging.
Yeah, I would agree with that to a certain extent. I think it depends on the bank. I'm at a middle market bank, so I think some people saw some of the writing on the wall and started changing their positions. And then, of course, there are certain banks where it takes longer with positions. So there are some who have gotten a little screwed. But I think at the same time, it's nothing like the 2008 crisis with a lot of the toxic debt that they held.
I don't know if anyone followed the news. It wasn't headline or anything, but it's pretty interesting that Brian Brooks, Coinbase's chief legal officer, got selected to head off the OCC, the controller of currency. And part of the reason it's a crazy time for that to happen is because of everything going on. And I wondered your all's thoughts on, for me personally, I was super sad to see him leaving, but to have someone from any, crypto exchange or key player in the space join that sort of role in the government is huge. So wondering
I'm so excited, and I wrote about this in my book, for as long as the government has been captured by the banking industry. I'm so excited for the government to be captured by the Bitcoin and crypto industry. So bring it on.
Yeah, that's cool.
I second that.
Hey everyone, cheers.
Hi.
Welcome,
Sorry to be
Jake.
late. Hey, how's it going? What I missed?
Timing. I think we just lost Jason, but we gained Jake. So thanks. And any opinions on the fifth pillar of Bitcoiners just seeping into the government?
Well, I guess we're talking about Brian Brooks taking over, which is good news, I think. It's always good to have someone who's on our side taking an important position in government. Can't complain. Sorry for Haley to lose him at Coinbase, but probably he'll be okay.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. This is a pretty crazy time to be. There's a lot of issues to solve, but Brian's the guy to do it. So it's exciting.
We've been stealing legacy players for a long time now. I guess it's time to give back.
That's true.
After they've been indoctrinated and radicalized.
Yeah.
So, I guess, a lot of people in this space don't like government, but I personally feel that government is going to be very important for, instrumenting the agenda of sound money and cryptocurrencies in general. How much is government and being a part and playing the government game going to be needed for this thing to move forward?
I would get David Bailey on for that question. He would just be in the burn it all down camp.
All right. DB, burn it down. All right, Jake.
Yeah, I think there's no choice but to play, right? The government is still the most important actor in this space, whether we like it or not, right? So, I think Bitcoin has come very far, but I don't think that Bitcoin will succeed in the way that we all want it to if the government were to take the most hostile view possible. So, I mean, I think it's important to have folks who are engaging and explaining why Bitcoin is good for the people and why the government should support it as opposed to opposing it. I think that, frankly, we'll do better if we work together on this than if we don't. That said, right, when you say government, that's a pretty big concept, right? What government are you talking about? I think so far the U.S. government has actually been fairly supportive in comparison to how it could have been, and in comparison to how some other governments have been, right? There are governments who are really not going to support this space at all. And so I think the more we can do to encourage our government and the governments that lead internationally to get behind this space, the better off we're all going to do.
Somebody's got to take the opposite view.
Remember when we were punk rock?
Well, I think
this?
Bitcoin still needs to be adopted by the end customer. It has to be a voluntary opt-in. It cannot be imposed. And I think losing that and wanting to involve the bureaucrats and the regulators, it's very noble. It's a classic way of doing it, but it's going to drag into this endless process where everybody wants to have his little grain of salt, and they're going to try to impose their way of thinking of the legacy system. We already have the legacy system. We already see where it's going. I always see how it was manipulated. Why would we want to put it there? Why would we want to replicate that? They've already done it with gold. They've already done it with fiat. Why would they do any different with Bitcoin? So I think you see my view on that. Yes, like these are individuals that will hopefully make as light touch possible to make the Bitcoin business flourish in the jurisdiction, because the jurisdiction that will be the most welcoming and that will allow the Bitcoin business to flourish will be the one who will harvest the revenues, the talent, the economy, the boost, everything. But I think it has to remain an opt-in light touch and not have grandiose hope that because of government involvement, this will lift it massively. I think this would create other massive undesired challenges.
What I've seen in the US from like a government regulatory standpoint over the last like 5 years is this like curve of like trying to understand it. Bitcoin only exists. Then we start to get Ethereum, the SEC issues, what's a security, how we test, and all of a sudden the oversight is just like escalating really fast. And every regulator's in the space. The New York Attorney General is sending like voluntary questionnaires, and it's just crazy. But as the understanding levels out, I'm starting to see regulators like giving deference to one another and backing off and trying to figure out how to streamline things. So like that's at least what I've seen over the last 5 years. But I think the crypto space moves so fast and is so innovative that like regulators are trying to just get a hold of it so that they can back off a little. I mean, most of these agencies don't even have the bandwidth to have that strong oversight. Like they are struggling to keep the resources and keep it going. So, you know, I mean, we're always talking about how in the banking world, I came from Silvergate, you don't get like every product or service approved. Regulators trust you, they come examine you. And when they're examining, that's when they sort of see what you're providing. Right now, an exchange like Coinbase has regulatory oversight on like every new token, every new product. And so, you know, I think there's like a push towards how do you find that perfect balance between regulatory oversight and this like anarchist movement that Bitcoin like embodies of get out of my area, government, leave me alone. I don't want you to watch what I'm doing.
Because you're mixing Bitcoin with securities. It's two different things. They're technologically completely different. So they cannot be overseen the same way. And that,
well, okay. So we have like the platypus of money, and I get that the securities versus Bitcoin argument can get in here. But I mean, what I love about this is I mean, most of us, I don't actually know where we're all from, are in a country that takes freedom of speech so seriously that I think there's a deep sort of crackdown that could happen that would be incredibly difficult in the US. And so I think that's what I sort of love about this space, is that obviously it's great if the government's on our side, though I'd rather we not rely on that, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't hurt for the government to leave us alone as long as there's someone somewhere that's banning it for advertising purposes. Anyway, I guess I just love, as someone who writes a lot of software in this space, that I'm like, as long as I'm not the one running this server, it's going to be fine. No, it's not really true with the CFTC, but otherwise, so.
Yeah, I agree with like Jake and Matt to the extent that like the segment of Bitcoiners that irritates me the most are the types that think there's something to be gained from antagonizing regulators and like governing bodies. Like there's absolutely nothing productive that can come from that. Like the lightest touch approach that we can achieve is only ever and always a win. And sure, like we have this like libertarian and sometimes anarcho-capitalist ethos, but a lot of people underestimate the negative consequences that government can have if they decide to just go full hog against something, especially a nascent technology. So absolutely no reason to not try and educate them and have them play nice with us as much as possible.
So I want to talk a little bit about history, in Executive Order 6102. And my priority for Bitcoin is just avoiding prohibition. I think Bitcoin survives prohibition, but I don't want to live through it. Okay. I'd rather avoid prohibition. We know that's an ugly scenario. What I've said and written is, prohibition is unlikely for various reasons, not least of which is that the only time it happened was in the context of a Great Depression. And that didn't worry me until relatively recently, when I see us facing hopefully not a Great Depression, but certainly strange times economically. And, let's just say more government activity and overreach than we've seen in a while. And so, we're definitely closer to that kind of a scenario today than we were a few months ago. And so, yeah, I don't, hold out hope for legalization or government embracing this thing, but I would prefer, not to, be out of compliance with the law while I'm hodling my Bitcoins.
Yeah, like I think there's a big difference between expecting the Fed to add Bitcoin to its balance sheet, which is preposterous and not going to happen probably in the near term or in our lifetimes or ever.
Why not?
And just like, I mean, hey, look, if they would, that would be great. I would argue for it for sure. But there's a difference between advocating for that and telling the government, let us keep building this and let's see what it can do and what value it can provide to people, right? I think it actually wouldn't be that hard for the government to come up with a legally defensible justification to make basically running a Bitcoin node illegal. I think FinCEN could do it pretty quickly. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying it would necessarily survive a challenge in the courts, but I think that if FinCEN wanted to say, if you're running a node, you're a money transmitter, that would be a huge problem for all of us. And what we want to do is convince them, not that they can't do that, because trust me, when you tell a regulator they can't do something, in general, their response is, watch me, right? What you want to do is convince them that they shouldn't. And so far, I think we've been extremely effective in doing that. That said, we've been effective in doing that during a period of time where Bitcoin hasn't really been a challenge to the government writ large, right? Bitcoin has been involved in some types of challenging activity, mostly around Silk Road and drug sales and things like that, a little bit facilitating Russian hacking and things like that, but nothing that really scares the government into thinking that Bitcoin as a whole is a problem, just that there are specific actors that they have to go after, just like they would go after any drug dealer or threat to national security, right? I think it's going to be really interesting to see in the next few years. I don't know if we've gotten to talking about the upcoming Great Recession or Great Depression or whatever we're going to have, but depending on what role Bitcoin plays in this, during the virus, post-virus world, it could be a much bigger threat, right? It could make the government a lot more concerned. It could make the Fed and the Treasury Department a lot more concerned. So we need to have good arguments why they shouldn't crack down on Bitcoin when all of a sudden people are starting to buy it as a hedge against, whatever the Fed's new operations are that they're going to start launching.
Just remember, there are countries where it has been considered a threat and we have seen it banned. And I realize that we are part of the hegemony, but China is a pretty big place to stamp down on OTC trading. The action in India was real.
They can stop P2P. I think the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that it's defensive technology. So in a horrible world where the US government or any other large government cracks down on running a node, like how expensive is it for them to enforce that? And is it so expensive that they can't actually enforce it to a degree where it would stop Bitcoin from working? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm betting that it is. It's too expensive.
Yeah, to clarify, in no sense do I think that like a negative or hostile regulatory stance would in any way stop Bitcoin. It would just make it a lot less fun and a lot like adoption slower and whatnot. All these things, all these goals that we have as sort of like a community and industry. But it wouldn't stop it. It would just set timelines back significantly.
It makes me think of when Trump tweeted like against Bitcoin and what a weird day that was. And also like how at the end of the day, one person's opinion, but it's like the president of the United States. What does that do? You know what I mean? Like, it strikes me as taking a lot of effort to ban something, especially in the US. As we've been saying, like people take their liberty here very seriously. And it also reminds me of like the 3D gun printing debate. Like, should people be able to 3D print guns at home? Like, I mean, people want to be able to choose what they do within a certain legal framework. So it's just kind of interesting,
Bitcoin is a very peaceful protection of private property. And you need to come back at what it is. It's speech, it's software, it's a very peaceful way of defending property. But let's take this scenario. Imagine they were to ban it. Okay, imagine they were trying to. It wouldn't be enforceable. They wouldn't be able to implement it. They could, but it could produce big publicity. At the same time, to have the complete opposite effect. Oh, you're saying like this thing is so powerful, it works so much that you need to ban it. Like you've tried to ban alcohol, you've tried to ban that, you've tried to ban that. So people, it may have the complete opposite effect.
Elizabeth, you make a very good point. My perspective is that's actually a potential scenario where it could just, see massive, it could be an accelerant. You could see mass adoption and basically people could come to realize that it's unkillable. And I personally am still risk averse. I'm happy to stack a few sats for a little bit longer to not have to live through prohibition, but that's my 2 cents.
No, obviously it's not an ideal scenario, but on what basis? What country would not want its citizens to be able to protect his wealth in a peaceful manner, in a scarce, like what, on what basis would you prevent someone from doing whatever the fuck they want with their money? Really, in the end, that's not it's not violent, it's not criminal, it's storing value, and it's the barterability, it's a communication system, and so on and so forth.
Well, but that's like the narrative that we've had to fight for years, is that the main use of Bitcoin is money laundering and things like that. There are companies out there like Chainalysis and Elliptic that have actually been able to factually prove that that's not true. But it's this narrative of like, what are people using Bitcoin for good? I think so. I think a lot more than bad. I think money is used for bad a lot more often.
Banks are notorious for money laundering. I've got a list that long of all the violation trackers of just legacy banking institution who on a yearly basis does multiple of the value of Bitcoin in those illicit activity. Like the list is endless. So to focus on that beautiful little gem that Bitcoin is, yes, it's disruptor. Give it some room, leave it some space, and don't create some narratives that fits while not looking over there. No, like look at the big banks have don't have a clean deck. Like they're creating a double standard where it's demonstrated way more on the other side than it's been demonstrated for real in Bitcoin, because as you mentioned, the analysis, they found like a minimal evidence to back the claim that it's about illicit activities.
This is where cooperating with government, I actually think, does feel good, because it's like I want our industry to be able to act like the banking industry.
To get away with murder, basically.
Yeah. I mean,
well
I think
said.
for both like positive and negative use cases of Bitcoin, like this whole discussion, like an overwhelming amount of the evidence that's cited is anecdotal. I think there's a huge responsibility on people who actually believe in this stuff, like us, to go out of our way to highlight the positive use cases of Bitcoin and crypto in day-to-day life. And I think like recently, just top of mind, the Zap team, the Mallards family primarily, has done a great job in providing some content in that arena. And like that stuff is what changes the narrative and pushes the burden of proof more heavily on people who want to push the negative, like illicit activity narrative that as Bitcoin's primary use case or a primary use case, instead of beneficial use cases, always trying to take back ground and fight an uphill battle. Those anecdotes are out there. They just need to be highlighted better. And I think we could all do a better job of highlighting those and creating situations where more of that content can be created.
And I mean, that's where the education piece comes in. In a way, you have to be friends with people in order for them to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
On it.
Can't we just show them books to read?
There's plenty of podcasts.
Yeah.
Could take up a whole day of that.
But it's difficult at the same time for the innovator's dilemma. Like if Uber had to go see, hey, taxi drivers, I'm going to completely screw your model. I'm going to reinvent it entirely. And yeah, it's going to be entirely different. And we're coming here to ask permission. Permission, the innovation is a roadblock. They're going to drag because there's no incentive from their point of view, especially that it disrupts them. Like compliance can be replaced by code. Like say that there's a whole lot of things can be implemented. So from many of these people, they may be scared that they are approving something that will make them out of job, which is in many cases inevitable. But at the same time, for the innovator's dilemma, I think it may create delays. And yes, it's fun to have the relationship, but it'd be better if we onboarded them to help them develop rather than try to fit in their system.
I've been expecting that to happen. Like sort of like there's a shadowy group of bankers and they're like, we finally understand what Bitcoin's doing and they're coming for us. And we're going to shut this thing down. And there probably is a shadowy group of bankers, but it doesn't appear that they've really rallied their forces to it. And I guess what I'm wondering is it because they think that we're irrelevant still? In which case I want them to keep thinking we're irrelevant as long as possible. Is it because they think that there's a way for them to make money off this? In which case that's great too. Is it because some clever developers said, no, they're private blockchains. Look at these, and they're sort of distracted with this nonsense technology. So anyway, I don't know which of those it is, but I feel like that worst case from the banking industry hasn't happened yet.
I think
it's everything. As an ex-banker, I can tell you, it's everything you just laid out. It's equal measures, all those things. Plus, some of them can just buy Bitcoin and hedge themselves.
Right, which is my favorite. Like maybe let's just convince them to buy some in the meantime.
That's what I do.
That factor increases over time. Jake, you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, so, I mean, I talked to a lot of lawyers from my old life before I got into Bitcoin full-time, crypto full-time. And basically, I think it's the irrelevant point. I think that mostly they just don't take this space seriously. They still think it's tiny, and in a way it is, right? So, I mean, Bitcoin's market cap is still, well, like 1/5, well, maybe a little more than that now, of, you know, some of the biggest companies in the US. And I think there still is just a general view that we're all just screwing around and there's, you know, nothing special here. And I think it'll be a little while longer till they figure out that they're wrong about that. And that's okay with me too. And that is sort of my view in general, is the light touch approach, both from government and from the entrenched incumbents in the finance industry, is fine. Stay away. Let us keep building. And we want to get this space to be as robust and built out and resilient as possible before anyone realizes basically that we're coming to eat their lunch. And by the time they figure it out, it'll be too late.
So
Whatever
I
it
push,
is, we're good.
I push this narrative a lot that confusion is good for Bitcoin. And like, I'm probably the most altcoin apologetic Bitcoiner there is, because I just think that anything that could, you know, confuse the masses, we want that, because we just want to continue to cruise along as long as possible. Like, what do people think about that?
I think maybe we like contextualize the type of confusion that we're looking at. Yeah, I might agree, but like we've showed a bunch of things to this point, and I can't show enough the work that Coin Center does for, at least on a federal level. They don't really work with state regulators, I guess, that much anymore, on educating and sort of pushing forward this, not necessarily pushing forward, but just like actualizing a light touch approach by regulators. And a lot of what they do rubs sort of anarchist libertarians the wrong way. But without them, like, we would like legitimately be in a very different regulatory environment. Like, I believe much more hostile regulatory environment right now. And like, I'm curious a little bit to hear, as a corollary to that, from Haley and Jake and maybe others who have experience, specifically you, to like from 2014 to 2017, maybe even 18, I guess, regulators were on an educational mission to understand what was going on. And now, like, has that sort of played out, and we've moved on to them just sort of like finding out like how to handle it now that they've understood it more or less? Or like what, like, I feel like at least my impression is a lot of the education is sort of 80–90% done, and now we're just in a phase where they're just trying to figure out what resources they have to allocate, and maybe drafting some new legislation or guidelines or whatnot. But like, where are regulators right now after like 3, 4, 5 years of being educated on what everything is?
What do you think, Haley?
So yeah, I mean, it was like 2015 when I joined Silvergate. That's where I got my start in crypto. And when we started trying to bank crypto at Silvergate, there was a huge like regulatory advising that needed to happen, because banking cryptocurrency companies had this like AML concern, and most banks still won't provide bank accounts to cryptocurrency companies. So, I mean, the trend I'm seeing now, though, is like back then, the education piece was like, what is AML? I mean, the Patriot Act was still sort of getting turned up for crypto, and people were still figuring out their money transmitter license plans. If you fast forward now, I mean, I think all the regulators in most of the states and DFS and even the SEC and CFTC, like, they get it. They understand, I would agree with you, 90% of how they want to regulate it. But when it starts coming to like building on top of something like Bitcoin, or obviously other coins, and like lending protocols or staking, that's like a whole new conversation. And that's where I'm starting to see like deference between regulators. Like, what does the CFTC say about this? Like, is that or what is it? So there's a lot more like a state regulator caring what a federal regulator thinks of a sort of innovative product. And so then that takes like more education on why it's okay, the conversations we're having all over the place. And so I don't think we're done educating at all, but it's definitely a lot better. Like the baseline understanding is way better, and the conversations are more exciting. And I think that the light bulb is starting to turn on for some of the regulators, which is cool, because they're getting it, and they're like, wow. I mean, like, Jake, your project is an example of that, where it's sort of like the potential of where this can keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think I agree with you entirely. I have some other concerns that are, it's kind of like saying the quiet part out loud. I should probably keep my mouth shut and not articulate any of this. But
I'm thinking like this if I agree with you, but I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, I think totally right that there's been unbelievably good education almost entirely from Coin Center. I think Jerry Brutto and Peter Van Valkenburg have done so much for this space in the US. I do think there is generally good understanding about what Bitcoin is and how it works, enough at least to get regulators off our backs. I think there's a couple problems. One is you have to remember there's a lot of turnover in some of these agencies and bureaus, right? So what one director of FinCEN thinks may be very different from what the next one thinks, or one Treasury Secretary to the next. So you can never be confident that you're done explaining the basics, because you just don't know what's going to happen in 1 year if there's a new administration or new leadership. So I think that's one thing to watch in the near term. In the longer term, I have two really big concerns. One is, right now, the regulators seem comfortable only regulating the on-ramps and off-ramps, right? Fiat to Bitcoin and back. And the thinking is, as long as they can get insight into those transactions, they're not really worried about what's happening just in Bitcoin, because there's not a lot of commerce just in Bitcoin right now, right? You can't really exchange Bitcoin for goods and services in the way that you can dollars. So they're not that concerned about watching what happens on chain. When that changes, and then they realize they don't really have the same kind of insight into on-chain transactions as they do in the typical financial system, that might change their view on just regulating on-ramps and off-ramps. The second and maybe bigger problem is privacy technology, right? So we all know that Bitcoin is going to get more private as time goes on. I think we've already made a lot of big advancements there with CoinJoin, Samurai and Wasabi and things like that. And even Lightning, provides some more privacy protections. That is not something that the government is going to be okay with. It's just a fact. We have to acknowledge that, at least not the way that they think about financial surveillance right now, which is basically to deputize intermediaries in the finance industry to watch all of our transactions. When they realize they can't do that fundamentally with Bitcoin, I think we're going to have a much bigger argument to have with the government. The education that Coin Center has done so far to get past this issue is basically to say Bitcoin is totally transparent, totally auditable. Everything happening on chain can be seen by the FBI and law enforcement. The FBI loves it when criminals are, selling drugs with Bitcoin because they can trace every transaction. That's not going to be true in a few years. And then we're going to have to figure out, what the argument is. That's going to be harder.
Can I just zoom out and answer CK's original question, which is, I think the narrative is simple. And there's two pieces here with respect to, all the other flowers blooming and altcoin apologism, as you suggested, CK, which is, there's a very simple argument to, how has the US economy continued to dominate the world? And part of that is the internet, and we let it happen, mostly unfettered, unregulated, and it was great. We got these giant companies, made a ton of money, helped us dominate the world. Now, there's a current backlash, obviously, it's just starting with respect to government and the internet giants. Nevertheless, I still think that most people think that the benefit of the internet has been possible. And the way that happened was basically mostly laissez-faire, let 1,000 flowers bloom. And I think that concept is Bitcoin's best friend, right? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of speculators that lose their shirts, unfortunately, trading and or owning altcoins. But that may be the unfortunate price of basically letting everything develop. And it's very possible that, I shouldn't say more than possible, in my opinion, Bitcoin is the thing. Like I'm optimistic about Web3 and us controlling our data and decentralization and all that stuff. Is that going to happen with, these other networks? I have no idea. But in the meantime, I think the idea that, letting things develop with a relatively light touch, and the fact that that more or less worked the last time around with the internet is probably our best pitch. You guys have been awesome. I got to drop, but thanks for all of your views and stuff, and great to meet you.
I have to go at the same time. Bye, bye everyone.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, CK, for setting it up.
Bye.
I've got one more for the lawyers in the hot seat related to this.
Yeah.
I gotta go too.
Oh, no.
I'm kidding.
Okay. Okay. So,
Let's keep it going.
Yeah,
I'm gonna mute my camera and go get a refill, so you don't get like a house tour. But I'm listening.
I've done that like 3 times.
So I'm going to ask this in the lightest way I can, I think. Is there a narrative that will let us, so like similar to how Bitcoin is growing and people think it's irrelevant, is there a narrative that will let us do the same with privacy tech? Because when I look at some of the stuff we were just trotting out as good tech, so CoinJoin, okay, but we call that mixing, which sounds just like laundering. And it's an explicit thing that we all do. So it's not like every time I use this tech, I get more privacy. It's like every time I go out of my way to go to the shady place down the street, I get my privacy. And I guess I'm wondering, is there a narrative that can be a little bit cleaner and maybe give us some more time on the privacy front?
Yes, definitely. I haven't worked on formulating it exactly, but let me throw a couple ideas at you, and then Haley might have something smarter to say. I think for starters, what you can say is privacy is necessary for Bitcoin to function, right? So once you've explained the value of Bitcoin to begin with, then basically what you can say is the problem with Bitcoin is that every single transaction that you make can be seen by everyone. This is actually not a positive, this is a negative. We don't want everyone to be able to see everything that we're doing. We have to have some kind of privacy in order for this system to work. So we have to allow that, that aspect of the network to flourish. I think that gets you a little bit of the way there. I think where you get into the real trouble is when you basically have to argue that the benefit of privacy outweighs the cost to law enforcement, right? And it's hard because like you see Chainalysis a few months ago, maybe last year, busting this like international child pornography ring. That is a good thing, right? All of us are happy that child pornographers have been arrested and are out of business. We all like that. We have to acknowledge that privacy technology will make that harder, and then make the argument that the benefit we get from privacy outweighs the cost, or alternatively, that there is
sort of letting them win by framing the argument that way, though.
Well, they're going to frame it that way.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, FBI.
I mean, I guess if we can make the transparency the extraordinary thing, and the privacy the normal thing, I wonder if that helps. And I guess my other question is like, and this I truly have no idea if this is how it works in today's financial system. Right now, is law enforcement used to having to like follow each hop for payments? Or do they expect to be able to see the whole thing? Because I guess like the other thing I'm thinking is like there's tech where we can have view keys where you can just say, look, here's what I did. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your chain of thought. I just want to make sure I give them the benefit of the doubt too early.
No, it's a really good point, and you're right that we don't necessarily want to be reactive to law enforcement's argument. I guess the problem is, right, I mean, this is a bigger issue than just financial privacy, right? We are arguing about privacy on every level all over the world now. And there are people in positions of power who think that privacy is a net negative, period, whether that's data privacy or anything else. And I do think that we need to make more progress on that front, not just for Bitcoin, but broadly. Let me shut up and see what Haley thinks about this.
No, I mean, it's interesting. I agree with you that it's a comparison between the benefit of privacy, I mean, and like personal freedom with what I'll say is that the Patriot Act got a lot more power after 9/11. And there is reason to be concerned that people can misuse funds. Bad things can happen. The whole narrative, like we talked about earlier, that Bitcoin is used more often for that than dollars I don't agree with. But I mean, I think we're seeing that battle unfold right now with FATF's guidance about the travel rule. I mean, to your question, like in the traditional financial world, information is passed along from bank to bank because they're banks. But here, as an exchange, it becomes very difficult. And from like an information security perspective, it becomes very risky to send someone's KYC information along.
Right.
I won't get into that as much, but what I will say is that I think I've mentioned or had the conversation with a few of you about, I've had really interesting conversations with Zuko. I like not related to Coinbase, but personally am a fan of Zcash. And I learned about it really early on in my Silvergate Bank days, like at Consensus, him presenting to a group of regulators, and he found that balance. And I know that, I mean, that's a whole nother topic of like, is the Monero approach or the Zcash, it's a whole thing. Yeah. But what I'll say is that he has a really interesting insight on how this compares to the internet and like HTTP and privacy in that way, and how the government has pretty quickly learned that encrypting and keeping things anonymous protects the United States a lot of times from foreign countries. I mean, learning our stuff. The government doesn't want us to know everything they're doing and everything they're spending money on. So, I mean, eventually, I think the government may figure out why it's good that a foreign country couldn't see everything I'm spending my money on if they want to. But that is like a long way to go. Sometimes I get sad because I don't know what of this will be accomplished like in our lifetime, to be honest, but that's like a deeper conversation.
Yeah, I think like the
month's been going, feeling like 10 years already.
Yeah, time is moving fast and slow right now. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think like one discouraging thing somewhat recently, actually, I guess it's almost a year ago now, were the congressional hearings about Libra, where this privacy issue came up, right? Where all of these Congress people are screaming at David Marcus from Libra about how are you going to ensure the privacy of the people who are using Libra, because we're so worried about what Facebook is doing with everyone's data. But then the next question would be, how are you going to make sure that we, the government, have total insight into every transaction going on through this network? And it's like, you can't have it both ways, right? You have privacy or you don't. Mm-hmm. And I would love to hear how Zuko explains this. I'm sure he has this 10 times better than I do. But it's a hard issue.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, what I can say is that I've talked in some like closed door discussions in DC with government agencies solely about privacy coins. It has such a misunderstanding and like fear element of why people are interested in it. I mean, I don't think criminals are going to privacy tokens. They're going to cash. People that are really like fundamentally interested in privacy, I think, are going to the privacy coins. But I before Coinbase, I was at Bitflyer, and in Japan, stablecoins to Japan is what like securities are here. In Japan, like it would be very, very difficult to get approval to list a privacy token. It has such like a reputation there. And so
Is there a narrative or a concern in the regulatory space around Lightning and what it means for Bitcoin privacy?
Honestly, I don't work on Lightning, so I may not know what the latest is on this, but I don't think there's a lot of discussion about Lightning in DC. I think Lightning is just like one step too far for most regulators and politicians to understand. I think they're like barely grasping the basics of Bitcoin now enough to sort of get it. But I don't think there's a lot of talk about Lightning. I think, again, Coin Center has just been phenomenally successful in keeping FinCEN away. There was some concern for a while that just because FinCEN didn't deem operators of Bitcoin nodes money transmitters, they might apply that logic to Lightning, and they haven't. So that's been great. But again, I think it's like first couple of years, light touch, stay away, let us figure it out. And they're going along with that. And that's as good as we can ask for.
They're going to love Taproot and Schnorr and all of these other wonderful things we're trying to get implemented now. I don't, I pity whoever has to explain that on the floor of the US Congress.
I'm trying to remove all details from this. I've had at least one fun conversation around FinCEN where we started to get into what sounded like legal advice for someone. Obviously, it wasn't for a project of mine. I would never talk about that in public, and risk attorney-client privilege. But what was interesting about it was I was like, this is hard to do. The discussion went, it appears that this system, has been designed in such a way that that maybe, federal MSB regulations are not going to apply, and the look from at least one lawyer in the room was what did he or she say? I think it was something like, they won't know what this is for 10 years. And so I do think there's a certain amount of we're building. I don't think we need to build as many turtles high as we have. A lot of it's complexity, like maybe 3 steps further than it actually needs on the engineering side. But it does give us, we're going back to confusion being good for Bitcoin. It does give us a little bit of space, I feel like. And I don't know if that's what you're saying, Jake, where Lightning is, but definitely with some other stuff that I've played with.
Yeah, I think that's right. And honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think we have to be bashful about saying we're, innovators and entrepreneurs. The principle of regulation in the US is not to go ask permission. It's not to go ask permission to build. So I don't think we need to go explain to everyone everything we're doing if we have good reason to believe, in good faith, if we are confident that there is not a current regulatory framework that clearly applies. It is not our job to go beg for permission to move forward. That's not how anything of substance or meaning has been done in this country. And I don't see why it would be any different for us.
That's the most optimistic thing we've said this whole call.
Oh, good. Cheers.
Thank you.
Where is everyone located? Like
in the Bay.
Statewide, yeah.
In the Bay.
I'm in the suburbs of Toronto.
I escaped the Bay. I'm in Atlanta now.
Okay.
Outside DC in Northern Virginia.
Yeah. I know.
I miss the Bay.
Yeah.
Where are you?
So, apologize.
I'm in San Francisco still.
Okay.
I'm debating like fleeing. I might rent a car and like fly out.
You might have missed your window.
Where would you go?
My family lives in Santa Barbara.
Out, that would be legit. Yeah, just get a car. That'd be easy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting. I live right next to a Safeway, and every day the line is just ridiculous. But I go at like, the store closes at 10, I go at 9:30 and it's empty. I'm like, y'all are stupid. Why is everyone standing in a line during the day? Sorry if any of you do that.
I've done it once, and the reason that I did it was because I wanted to get the hand soap. I prepped weeks before my neighbors, I'm proud to say, but I really wanted to get hand soap, and so I got there right at 8. There was a line with markers on the ground, so we were far enough away from each other. But by the time I got to the hand soap aisle, it took me maybe 20 minutes to like get produce. Gone. Yep.
Yeah, you have to beeline it.
I didn't realize. Yeah, next time I'll keep my eye on the price.
I have to say thank you to the Bitcoin Twitter space for getting me prepped, because I felt so prepared and ready, and everyone I knew was 2 weeks behind me. Like I was at Costco before the toilet paper was even a thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there were some people really ahead of the game. I mean, and I've been work from home now. I think I'm on week 5. I'm really tired of being at home, but Coinbase just like pretty much said, hey, 1,000 employees, your work from home, buy a monitor, expense it, don't come in here. And people are funny. People are like pinging like, I have a plant, it's dying, no one's watering it, can I go get it? And they're like, no, you cannot. We did a deep clean, no one can go in the building.
That's kind of
I've been
adorable,
working
though.
from home for 5 years. This is nothing to me.
Yeah, this is my 10th year of running a remote company, and I've only been in an office for maybe 6 months. So
how do you do it?
Well, now it's much harder because I have children, and so with children, it is not the same. If they were out of the house and school was open, it would be different. But like, I think the family thing is hard. But what I like about it is I can get lunch with them. I can kind of like be a lot more flexible with my life. I mean, the biggest part, we're all experiencing work from home now, whether or not we wanted to. But I think the biggest like life change is actually going async. So if your work can let you kind of move things around an hour or two, and it's not just like back-to-back meetings, it gets pretty cool. Suddenly you show up when there's no one else at the grocery store because your work was flexible. So
Decentralizing hours. What does coronavirus mean for the future of work from home? Because I think it's a massive step forward. Like whatever companies are operating right now are operating remotely. I think that's going to be a difficult precedent to overcome for like the managers that want you to work from home or work at the office every single day.
Yeah,
I think that so many people are learning that their ideas about how often they needed to be in the office have sort of been disproven by this. That they're seeing how much time you save when you're not sitting in traffic for 2 hours a day. I think it's going to change things. I think it'll be hard to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah. So much better for the planet. Yeah.
2 hours there, 2 hours back. And I am so happy not to be doing that ever again. And on the other hand, the one thing that I've noticed over the last 5 years, and what I'm kind of hoping that this will sort of give my coworkers an insight into, is because everybody else is in an office and I'm not. I have been like, I keep, whenever I go into the office once a quarter, I would go into the office and be like, hey, remember me? I feel so excited. Good to see everybody. I'm hoping that this remote experience for the entire office will make them understand sort of how I I read an article at the very beginning of the working from home 10 years ago that started, about how how companies will find their culture shifting, and that they need to maybe schedule water cooler breaks where and just shoot the breeze with their coworkers. What are you doing and what's up, and did you catch the game on the weekend? Because that's what people do, and that physical connection, that face-to-face personal connection, not to mention that's where a lot of happens. Activity that happens when people are just randomly talking, and ideas that they might otherwise not have come up with are sparked with those face-to-face interactions.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that there will be sort of a little light bulb moment that goes off for a lot of companies that have a mix of in-house and remote workers, of sort of appreciating how the culture needs to involve remote workers more, especially the way that the economy has shifted to that sort of gig economy of a mix of freelancers and full-timers.
Do you all see like negatives
What
in
happens at the end of this?
I think the biggest negative right now. I think this is the hardest part about being remote is two things. So one, I think it's really hard when not everyone's remote. I strongly agree. And whenever I talk to companies who are trying to do remote management, if you have this second-class citizen thing and you don't make every single in-person meeting remote friendly, you've lost, and you've created this separate culture in your company. And actually Coinbase, I know that, I don't know how public this is, but I know that that was really hard for Coinbase, seeing this like Coinbase remote and this back and forth struggle. And I'm seeing it with other companies. No, please speak to it.
With Coinbase, like I've only been in there. I mean, I joined in October in the new office building. It is so seamless. Like the Google Calendar syncs to an iPad outside of each conference room. You push start and it turns on to like someone that is on my team has been with Coinbase for 5 years in Arizona. He handles all of our licenses. And I mean, it's very much like he's in the office, but
awesome.
I mean, I was going to say as like an extrovert, I really, really miss the office. I mean, it does not feel the same to me. And I mean, I was working from home like 1 day a week. I think that it's so nice to like not have to commute and rush. But for me, like total work from home is like, I'm not digging it.
Purgatory.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that it's hard for is it's typically to go total remote. It's much harder on managers. If you have ever had the terrible experience of giving someone performance feedback remote or firing someone remote, it's pretty awful.
Yeah.
It's really hard because like in person, you can just take them aside for a second and make it clear, hey, just a little feedback, not a big deal. Mm-hmm. Okay, if your choices are Slack and Zoom, if it's Slack, whatever. And if it's Zoom, whoa, this is so serious. You set up a meeting for this. And it's hard to get like that. And then the other thing I've found, and this is for early stage startups, is ideation and whiteboarding time is really hard when it gets broken up by suddenly one of our internet will go out, or like someone won't have a whiteboard, or the webcam's not, it's just, and so I think those are the two parts where even though I run 100% remote, I still do in person for quarterly strategy sessions and new architecture for big products, because like it's just too hard to not.
Yeah, seconding that, like times 1,000. There's so much day-to-day work that can get done that you might not think can get done remote if you structure things properly. But especially for like brainstorming and solving like really difficult problems that take like a lot of discussion to work through, there's still no replacement for being in person. Now, I haven't tried like a VR brainstorming session yet, so maybe that's the next step. But
this might be VR's moment, and not cryptos.
Who knows? But
I've seen a lot of VR talk on like a lot of VR chatter. And I think that would be very, very cool. I want to borrow my kid's VR headset one day and like go into some of those conferences just to see what it's like. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah. Has anyone done that? That seems so neat. I mean, I'm like so not a gaming person, but I used to have a Wii. But like to be, I would bowl with it. But like to make like an emoji, what's it called, an avatar?
Avatar, yeah.
And then be able to go like walk up to you all. I mean, that's what is missing from like this sort of thing. I can't like just go into a group chat with Jake real quick and just be like, hey, really nice to see you. Here's an update on something we were talking about. Like, has anyone done that? Or someone from EY was telling me about Decentraland.
Yeah.
Not Bitcoin, but.
So on Bitcoin Magazine podcast, when you talk about altcoins, you drink. That's for sure.
I mean,
you can't bring up Decentraland.
Okay, if this
VR
is
is great
I
though.
brought my drink to the other table, then my internet went out, so I came back to this table, and my drink is still on my old table. I can't get.
We'll
So,
give you one.
so for
credit.
those of us without any VR hardware yet, if I wanted to get something to just kind of dip my toe in, what should I order?
Looks like a
Maybe Jason.
I think you can wear your phone on your face or something.
Yeah, what are you holding up? You have a
No,
little headset?
this is my phone, but I'm pretty sure you can do like the cheapest way is just like do like cardboard or something and strap your phone to your face. I'm pretty sure it's awful.
Just tape my phone to my head.
Yeah,
Okay, that sounds like a good way to get sick. I'll try that.
Hey, Jake.
Well, welcome back.
Yeah,
How gross are your phones? Does anyone sanitize their phone?
Yeah.
Like 3 hours.
And
Well,
every
does-
version that comes in.
Do other people touch your phone?
Just me,
Well, no,
but
dude,
like
you
I
go
touch
to the
everything else.
bathroom, and I bet you touch it and you don't sanitize it. Be real.
Or like you grab your wallet and then it's in your purse with your phone. I sanitize my phone and my like laptop all the time.
Right. Raise your hand if you sanitize your phone in the last 24 hours.
I'm like touching my face.
Super spreaders.
I don't let anyone touch my phone.
I'm not interacting with any other humans, so who am I
But
gonna?
you touch stuff.
Yeah.
All right, shut up.
But I have a question because I just started seeing like celebrity chefs do this. Are you wiping down your groceries when you unpack it?
Yep.
I'm
Yes.
doing
Takes
some
an
crazy
hour.
disinfection of groceries.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like
no,
your
it's-
broccoli. You're like, I don't know.
Yeah, it sucks.
No, you gotta wash everything down, and then you got the spray bottle with the isopropyl alcohol, and you just give everything a good spray. That should do
You
it.
also leave stuff in the sun for a couple days, but that doesn't work for like broccoli. So it works for packaged
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
I take the mail.
So I'm not too worried about it.
I saw like a celebrity chef on my Instagram ordered a pizza, Lysoled the box, slipped the pizza out, put it in an oven to like kill the germs on the pizza. I'm like, all right, then I'm gonna get.
It's gotta hit 160 internal for that to work.
I feel like a pizza is actually a pretty safe bet because they cook it and then you pick it up with a pizza peel and you put it right in the box. So like a lot of other food is being assembled after it's cooked. They're like rolling up your burrito and like
eating burritos like all the time.
yeah. Well, I haven't
make a
ordered
lot of
any
my own
food.
now.
Yeah,
Haley,
but I
I've
just
been
feel
thinking about your photos. You've been posting burrito photos, and I've been like, oh, should I tell her not to eat out? Like
One
you should be
burrito-
making
One
food.
burrito photo though. Let's clarify. I've not been like running around town posting pictures of burritos. I just heard that they closed the dog park down today too, by the way. So
I'm worried about the taco truck down the street if it's gonna like go out of business without my help.
At least
But
there's
at the
not,
same
like,
time,
rentals.
yeah, true. That's a good point.
I did Instacart in Toronto for the first time today. I do it every time I go to Nashville because there's no groceries around, no grocery stores near.
I've been going to Dunkin' Donuts every day.
You're a monster. I'm so glad this is a Zoom call and we're not in the same room as you.
What do you do in the Dunkin' Donuts?
wait, why?
Maybe he disinfects in Dunkin' Donuts. Maybe that's.
What's wrong with Dunkin' Donuts?
What is that?
Do you eat the donuts or do you eat
No, I
something
just
else?
get coffee. I just get coffee.
No, it just gets really close to people so they can breathe on him and me. So it's...
No, I just get coffee.
Okay, what
need
is
to
it
get
doing to stay sane? Like exercise wise?
I've already gone way off
Okay,
the
good.
deep end, so we're good.
Good. That's good.
Lots of walks. And I'm going to say this has helped a lot, guys. I've got to bounce, but we should do more of these. This is really good just to keep us all sane in the time of working from home.
I'm
And
like,
I guess
For sure.
is anyone even watching
I
this?
guess I'm leaving in the
Yeah.
time of COVID-19.
Who cares?
There's like
Matt, could you
20
talk to
or 30 people watching this. Yeah.
It says 56.
I wish the people watching could ask questions. They can't. Like the chat's just us.
At least one person has DM'd me. I asked a question and you're not answering it. So I think that's
Oh, no.
Aw.
Where are the
There is a
questions?
chat
Come
box,
on,
but I
Zoom.
always ignore it. I
Oh,
ignore it.
come on. We need the
Don't
chat.
ignore
box.
it.
I want
All right,
the
you gotta go
questions.
into Periscope.
You need to like let people engage with us. That's so mean. They're just like, hey,
So I was trying to game plan with Christy about like how to manage the chat box and the
We can't
conversation, and the conversation never happened, so that's why we're here. But it is what it is.
All right.
Next time.
I think it's still great. I've been cooking a lot and tweeting about it. So
You've been cooking some good-looking steak.
A lot of steak. That's Christian for you.
So for me, it's steak goes on Twitter. Everything else goes on Instagram. Just because Bitcoiners don't like other things.
They don't.
If you post chicken, they're like, "What's that?"
Yeah. I post like vegetable stuff. They're like, oh.
Yeah, no, insufficiently carnivore. That is not acceptable around here.
I got a lot of ribeyes though. I stocked up on those first.
Are you an outdoor griller or indoor? Like, are you on your skillet?
Cast iron is great, but yeah, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have a roof, and I have both a smoker and a grill, so
Nice.
like, there's no shortage of cooking.
Have you tried Butcher Box?
No.
It's pretty good.
Worth?
Definitely. Yeah.
Are
definitely.
you invested?
No, that is not a shill. I just
this is an
just use
affiliate. This is a verbal affiliate link of some sort.
Yeah, no,
I had
don't
to
get
check with
paid.
Jason.
That's true. I hate that actually, but that is true. Like, people clown the shit out of me when I make some kind of post on Twitter about something. They're like, he's an investor in that. I'm like, it's vegetables. In vegetables.
Yeah, nobody can
Vegetables.
unironically. It's 2020. No one can unironically like something without getting paid to do it.
No, he's getting paid in carrots. This dude loves carrots.
Butcher Box is good though.
Yes, I don't own Butcher Box. It's awesome. It's good stuff.
All right.
Easy.
What other good delivery stuff is there?
Daily Harvest. I'm obsessed.
In SF?
I think it's everywhere. They send you not pre-made, like frozen smoothie things in a cup. All you do is pour in the milk, put it in a blender, and it's like the best smoothies, like mint, cacao, and blueberry fig. Like,
do they send the milk as well, or do you have that?
Yeah, you buy the milk, but like, it's literally what I make every morning for breakfast. It's so easy. And it's like probably $4 a smoothie compared to, like, in San Francisco, a smoothie would be like 12 if you went out. I don't want to like buy bags of fruit and make it myself. Their mixes are like perfect. I'm like very into these, so I could keep going, but I'll let other people.
Have you heard of Imperfect Foods or Imperfect Produce?
Yeah, I've used them before.
I'm an investor in that though.
Oh, yeah.
There's the shill. All right, give us the pitch. What is it? I've never heard.
Really do.
I've considered it for a while.
Yeah, it's they literally buy ugly produce and vegetables and package that up and sell it at like 40% discounts. It's a huge win when that would end up in the trash because it's not like a grade A round whatever.
Or you can dumpster dive, then it's 100% off.
100% off. That's true.
Our grocery store has bins of those.
Oh wow.
They just call them, like blemished this, blemished, and you pick out the ones that you want, and yeah, it's right in our grocery store.
Actually appreciate that. I think that's a huge evolution beyond this ridiculous waste of food that we do here. I don't know about eating out of the garbage unless you have to.
One of the craziest things about a lot of the food that you get from a place like Imperfect Produce or whatever is that a lot of it is just like not the right size. So it's like, oh, these potatoes are too big or too small. Like these oranges are definitely not shaped perfectly round. It's like, what the hell?
Makes no sense,
Perfectly
right?
good, yeah.
Yeah, they just grew around.
Does Bitcoin fix this? Do we have like a fiat food economy?
Yeah.
Well, it's a way of thinking.
No one's into that.
It's a mind. Sort of a way of expanding your mind to think about things in a new way and try different things, right? Not what you're told you're supposed to buy or what you're supposed to use. So,
all right, I'll take that.
That's I'm stretching, but there you go.
Yeah. I'm
So
almost
Bitcoin doesn't
ashamed.
fix this.
I do not think Bitcoin fixes this. No. I'm ashamed to admit, I think my wife and I have been ordering basically everything we need from Amazon. And I'm not sure that like supporting Amazon right now is the best thing to do given how they're treating their workers. But I mean, that's the market, right? It's so easy. They have everything, it comes quickly. So that's mostly what we've been doing.
Okay, so what I've started doing, which is a workaround for Amazon, is for example, I get a heater because the apartment that my kids are in is too cold, and plus we've shut off vents and stuff to isolate them a little more. But I just went online to my local hardware store and I ordered what I need. I ordered the space heater online, and they do a drop off. You pay for it in advance. They send you an email with a code. You drive up, there's a phone number in the parking lot. You phone the phone number from your car, and somebody comes out with your whatever you ordered, puts it in your car, you drive away. And there's no contact. You're still keeping the local business alive because they're still an essential service. Anything that's an essential service, I would look into seeing if they have some sort of drop-off, curbside drop-off or delivery. A lot of them are starting to switch their models up. I bought my dog food that way. I went to the pet supply store, phoned in my order, met them in the parking lot, didn't have to get out of the car. And it's been great because I'm not having to have any contact with anybody, and I can still support the local business and avoid Amazon. A lot of non-essentials on Amazon. I actually looked up that space heater on Amazon. It would have not arrived for a month. So
what do you guys think about this? Like, what do you think the new normal is going to be like after coronavirus? Like, do we ever go back to school? Do we ever go back to eating at restaurants? Like,
do we ever
go
shake
to
the hands of strangers?
I mean, seriously, like, do you ever like go up to someone and like, hey, what's up? Or, is all that over? It feels like it's over to me.
I don't think it's over.
so happy.
It's over. It's over.
I don't think it's over.
I think we wear masks in America,
No,
but
too-
it's
It's
not
over. Masks. I just did a call and everybody had masks on. We're on Zoom and they had masks on.
Just like at home? What are you guys doing?
No, they were
That's
in
not how
Japan.
computer viruses work.
They were in Japan and everyone had masks on. I'm in my house.
I do think that I do think that the whole like wearing masks in public thing, which is kind of like weird to see in the US, will become less weird. But I mean, do we go back to a time when we like ride mass transit and don't have a panic attack about it? Yeah, I think that we do. I think we have a fairly short goldfish memory, and we'll be okay.
The day we are allowed to like.
We'll watch. I'm gonna remember this.
I won't say like the day the government announces that we can like leave our house, I'm not going to, but I actually trust Coinbase and like the job they're doing, tracking what's going on a lot more than what I'm hearing from our government. But
I heard Easter.
I'm sorry.
I said I heard Easter will be totally fun.
We're gonna smush into a church on Easter Sunday, and anyways, yeah, what I was gonna say though is once I feel comfortable that this is actually like on the decline and over, I'm gonna hug everyone and just like most things I think will go back to normal. But I think you weren't online when we were talking about like work from home being sort of like maybe a new thing that everyone's like, wow, this still worked. I mean, we haven't like
WeWorks is dead. It was dead before this. It's totally dead. Yeah. I think people downsize their offices. I mean, I think that I think things are going to be different. Like I really do, really different.
I think it's going to be awkward. Oh, go ahead, Haley.
No, I just mean like, but we're going to go back to restaurants. Like you said, like, will people go to restaurants or like high five? You don't think people are going to ever go out to dinner anymore?
I think about like what I used to do, like screaming at Pomp on a train in like New York, and everyone's like packed in and there's a guy playing a guitar and everyone's trying to it's like that. I'm not doing that anymore. Like,
Yeah, but most people don't ride the train because it's fun. Like for most people, it's not going to be a choice to like, oh, I'm going to take my helicopter from now on. Like we don't have a choice. Like we're going to go back to something for most people that resembles what we were doing 2 months ago, because we're not going to completely change the world in 6 months. It's not going to happen.
So I don't know.
Hard time getting people on board now when it's an issue.
Yeah,
That's true.
I think it's going to be awkward. I think there are going to be some people like you, Jason, and probably me more than others who feel that way, that like handshakes are done, right? But it's disgusting to begin with. We should just not be doing it anyway. There are other cultures that don't do it. Like, what is the point? Yeah, exactly, CK, right? We don't need to shake hands. The thing is, like here in DC, I bet you 75% of people are still shaking hands right now. And they're definitely going to keep doing it. And you're going to have that awkward interaction where you walk up and like the 65-year-old guy wants to shake your hand and you're like, sorry, man, like stay away from me. It's going to be very awkward for a while.
I mean, job interviews. It's going to be really weird. Like all this silly stuff we were programmed to do, like shake her hand, look her in the eye, you know, all this stuff. I'm not doing that.
I hope they still look him in the eye.
Maybe.
I want to get bold.
Shield.
I want to get one bold prediction and a sign off from each person, and then I think we can wrap this up. We're going on beyond 2 hours now, so this has been an epic ride. But I got dinner waiting outside too, so it's time to wrap it. Let's start with Haley. What's a bold prediction post Corona, and then whatever sign off you want to make.
Oh man, you're gonna put me first. So, you know, I'm, like I said earlier, I'm really excited about Brian Brooks joining the OCC. I think that I agree with what we said earlier. I don't know if Bitcoin will ever become sort of embraced large scale by the US like that, but I do think that like digitized currency and stable coins, I think that's going to take off. And yeah, this has been really fun. It was nice seeing familiar faces and meeting other people, and I'm always down for these type of things, you know, even offline, because like I said, I'm going on week 4 and it's tiring. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for the insight. Jason, you want to go in next?
September, new all-time high for Bitcoin this year. September. And I appreciate interacting with you guys. I'm kind of in my own bubble here in Raleigh, so it's nice to see the people that sometimes interact with on Twitter and debate with, and hopefully I'll have more discussions with you guys.
Absolutely, more to come for sure. Christy.
I'm liking that all-time high in September. I'll go with that, sure. I think that Bitcoin's going to keep operating the way it was designed to, the way it's supposed to. I think that the whole priced in thing is hilarious to listen to both sides of. So again, you write it out. It depends what your time frame is, and I'm just waiting to see where it goes. Honestly, I think it's just really hard to predict, and what's going on right now throws a monkey wrench into everybody's predictions. It may happen slower than we thought, but it'll be there. Fundamentals are all strong, and the tech's there. So, and I think there's so much cool stuff being built right now that it's going to make it so much easier to onboard people and get people interested, and people who are right now interested in what's going on, like the questioning money. The number of people I have shared Colin Harper's article on what's up with the Fed, which doesn't even touch on Bitcoin hardly. Like people are asking me, and I know nothing, but people are asking me what's going on with this money. Should we be looking at Bitcoin? And I just start sharing articles with them. It's such a great intro. It's such a great conversation starter for people who've, you know, had it in the back of their minds, and here we go. Like, I can't believe this is all happening right now. So right before the halving. So it's, I think, super cool. Don't know where it's going to go, but I think it's going to get there, just not on a time frame that we might have thought of 2 months ago or whatever, 20 million years ago this month. So
Wasn't that a drinking word? Halving?
Halving? Yeah, I will take it.
Cheers. How do we deserve this timeline? That is the real question.
Right?
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Brandon Curtis.
For sure.
Next, and then Jake, and then we'll wrap it
Sure.
up.
Okay. I actually know, I think that right now I know more people who are buying Bitcoin for the first time than any other time. Like even when everything was blowing up and it was going to 20K, I know more people in the last month who've called me up and say, hey, like I made that Coinbase account 2 years ago and I finally actually bought some. So I don't know what the price is going to do. I'm not sure how the halving is going to play out. But in terms of the number of people engaged, we're definitely going to hit all-time highs there.
Yep.
Bullish. Jake.
All right. Bold prediction. So I think that we have a standstill in the global economy, right? I think this is going to go on for months and months. I think that the recovery is going to be a lot slower than most people think. I think that the main way that governments seem to think they can handle this is by firing up the money printers, right? Print, print, print. Might work in the US. We might get some inflation. I don't think we're going to have hyperinflation. However, I think other countries with weaker currencies will try the same thing. I think many of them will go the way of Zimbabwe and Venezuela and will hyperinflate their currency to nothing. So my bold prediction in the post-virus world is that at least one of those countries will adopt Bitcoin as its national currency, having destroyed their own. That's my bold prediction.
Damn, that's bold. That's bold.
It was super fun hanging out with you guys. Thanks for having me. Happy to do this anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a very quality group of people. Thank you for honoring me to host this. It was a lot of fun. We will be having these once a week on Bitcoin Magazine and hopefully get some fresh faces as well as some amazing returners from the past 2 weeks. So thank you for everyone left for joining, and thanks for everyone who watched for sticking around for 2 hours and some change.
Thanks for making it happen.
Bye.
See ya.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.